Hello everyone, we are back with another Podcast.co AMA and demo. Hope you're all doing well. Yeah. How are you?
I'm
You all
fine.
right? Yeah.
You start. So I'm Laura, and I'm the customer success manager at Podcast.co. So if you go through support, you're probably getting through to me. So hello to everybody that I've already spoken to, and hello to anybody I probably will speak to after this.
And I'm Daryl. I'm the marketing manager here at Podcast.co. So what we're going to do today is we're going to run through a demo of the platform. We'll go through all the different features that are there. We've got a brand new one as well to show you, which is quite exciting. I know a lot of people have been asking about it. So hopefully you've got lots of questions about how it's all going to work. And then once the demo is finished, we'll go through all your questions and any other comments that you might have. So shall we just kick things off with the demo then?
Yeah, certainly. So if I can get my screen up on the screen there. Lovely. So basically I have this example account up, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through a whiz-stop tour of everything that a normal account would have. And if you have any questions as I go along, feel free to leave them in the comments, and then we'll be past those at the end so we can answer them. So just to start off, just so you know where I'm up to in the whole sign-up process here. When you first sign up and sign into your account, you'll have two options: one to create a brand new podcast, and the other to import an existing podcast. So if you're importing, you click that, paste your feed in, it'll pull everything across, and then you'll be exactly where I am. If you are creating a brand new podcast, you fill in the title, description, categories, all the information, which you can change later on, so don't worry too much about that. I'll show you how you can change that in a little bit. And once you've filled all that in, you'll be exactly where I am. So I'm not too far ahead of you guys. So when you come in here, first off, you've got this little home page here, and this just kind of shows you everything that's going on with your podcast at a brief glance. So in here, I can see how many episodes I've got live currently that my listeners can access and listen to. I can see my total downloads for the last 30 days and my total unique downloads for the last 30 days. I'll explain the difference between those two in just a sec. And then I have this extra graph on the end here that shows me an estimated guess at how many subscribers my podcast has. Just a quick go over the reason why that can't be 100% accurate is literally just because there's so many different apps out there with new ones being made all the time. Not all of them provide readable access to the subscriber count. Some of them don't even record it. So essentially what this does instead is it takes a decent guess based on the amount of monthly unique downloads you get on a recurring basis. So just to explain the difference between the monthly downloads and monthly unique downloads. Monthly downloads is every single download your podcast has had over the last 30 days. Unique downloads is every IP address, so every person that's downloaded over the last 30 days. So the example I usually give is if I was to download an episode of the podcast 4 times in a row, for whatever reason, monthly downloads would show that as 4, but unique would show that as 1 because I'm one person. And down the bottom here, when you first get started, you'll have a little checklist of things that you need to look at doing next with your podcast, just to give you an idea of what you need to be looking at doing. They all do have a lovely video of myself attached explaining what each one means, which I won't play right now. But once you've got all of those ticked off, that will disappear and you'll get links to things like our blog and our help center down there instead. So moving on this menu, next up is the episodes tab. So this is self-explanatory from the tab name. It's where all your episodes of your podcast are going to live. In terms of uploading episodes, that's super simple. You can click and drag an MP3 file into this window and it will start uploading. Or you can click this orange upload episode button at the top here, and that'll just open up your file finder, and then you can select the MP3 file that way instead. Once it's uploaded, you'll get through to a window like this, where you can type in a episode title, bit of a description. There is an author field here. So for instance, if you have a guest host on and you want to temporarily override the main author of the podcast for one episode, so they've got their name attached to it, you can do that there. If it's just going to be the same author as usual, leave it blank. Episode type here, full is a normal episode, trailer is a trailer, and bonus is any bonus content you want to be putting out. Episode season number if you're using seasons. If you're not using seasons, just leave it blank. And then you do have a content rating button for each individual episode. So if you're only going to have a couple of episodes here and there that might have explicit content in, mark those separately. If it's going to be pretty much every single episode, you can mark the entire podcast as explicit instead, which is recommended, just because it'll save you quite a bit of time. So fill all of that in. And then once you've filled all of that in, you'll then get through to this window. And this is the final one, and it's just choosing when you want your episode to go live. So public is live straight away. Scheduled means that you can schedule episodes up to publish later on automatically. So say I wanted this to go out on Monday at midday. I could do that and click schedule, and I don't have to touch anything. It will automatically go out at that date and time. So that's pretty good for if you want to record in bulk and then just schedule them up through the month and then have a breather. So that's quite nice. And then unlisted is your drafts box. So essentially anything that goes into the unlisted section is not publicly accessible. The only way you can access it is with the direct link to that episode. So the main thing we see people using that for is if they have recorded with someone that needs to approve the content before it goes out, they'll pop it in the unlisted section, send the person the link to the episode. Once they've listened to it, given it all the okay, then you can move it across into published or scheduled super easily, and it's ready to go. Also in here on these episodes, you can see the date and the time the episode went live and how many downloads it's currently on. If you need to look at that number in a bit more detail, you can come over on the right to episode analytics, and this will just give you that number in a bit more detail. Obviously, my analytics are going to be a little bit depressing just because this podcast is not public, so yours will look 10 times better than this, I'm sure. But to change the date range you're looking at, you can click on the date range at the top here, and then you've got a few different presets, or you can select a custom range by clicking a start and end date on the calendar, and that will all adjust in the background. You have this graph at the top showing your total and unique downloads for any day during the period of time you've got selected. You can hover over each day for an actual number. And then you have two graphs down the bottom showing where your listeners are coming from and what they're using to listen to your podcast. See if I can make those a little bit more colourful. There we go. Like I said, not public. Yours will be a lot better than this. And you can hover over these segments for an actual percentage as well. Also over here on the right, you have the share episode button, which gives you a few extra bits. So the embeddable players per episode. So if you have a blog style website or a journalist style website and you want to embed episodes into your articles, into specific articles, you could use these, stick it at the top of the article, and then you've got a podcast embedded into each article explaining a bit more about it. Page is the direct link to the episode on your web page that we provide you with. I'll show you that in a bit more detail a little bit later on. And you also have the audiogram feature in here as well. So this is provided by Headliner. It's an integration with them. And essentially we give you the equivalent of a Headliner Pro account, which is pretty cool. When you click the button, what this does is it drags the episode audio across into Headliner, and then from there you can make some pretty snazzy little graphic video content of your podcast audio. You can do the whole episode, or you can do interesting clips of the episode. And then people really like using this for creating promotional content. So they'll clip out an interesting thing someone said, turn that into a video, and then post that all over social media to create a bit of hype before the episode goes live, which is actually really effective. So really recommend using that feature if you do sign up with us. Also over here on the end, you've just got a couple of extra bits. So edit just brings up that window again. So if you need to edit any of the podcast episode information, you could do that in there. Replace media. If you accidentally upload the wrong audio file, you can come in here, select the correct audio file, and that will change on directories as well over 24 hours. Move to unlisted is exactly what it sounds like. It will switch the episode away into your unlisted section. Transcription feature also lives in here. So when you click this, it will open up a window for you to select the language of the transcription, like this. So, for example, if I select English UK, and then when you click continue, that will, for an average 30 to 40 minute episode, I'd say maybe 15 to 20 minutes processing time. Then you come back in here and it will have the full transcript generated for you of the episode. So you can then copy that into a Google Doc and make some edits and edit it up into an article perhaps. We also provide you with a time code version as well. So if you need to send something to your editor to make editing a little bit easier for them, you can do it that way as well, and it'll have all the timestamps on it for when people said certain things. And there's also a download option here as well for if you need to download a backup copy of any of your episodes. So moving along at the top here, you've got the analytics section. I'll kind of whiz through this because it is kind of the same as the episode analytics, but this time it's for the whole podcast. So again, you can adjust the date range up here. You've got a couple of presets, or you can select a custom start and end date, and it all adjusts. Same graph up the top showing total and unique downloads per day. And same two down the bottom showing where your listeners are coming from and what they're using to listen to your podcast. But this time you have an extra one over here on the left that just shows you what your most popular episodes have been during the time that you've got selected. So that's pretty good for finding out what sorts of topics have been popular with your audience, so you might bring those back later on. Settings. So a lot of this is pretty straightforward. Basic settings allows you to adjust anything to do with the main body of the podcast. So remember at the beginning when I said when you first create a podcast, you're selecting your title, categories, artwork, all of that. If you put something in there initially that you don't like later on, you can come in here and change it, so don't panic too much. So if you need to update the artwork, description, any of that, you can do all of that in here. Advanced over here on the left. This is the section that we recommend as soon as you've set your podcast up. You come into advanced settings and set this up next before you do anything else. Just because there are a couple of things in here that can cause some issues if they're not set up. The main culprit and the worst culprit is time zone. If that is not set up to match your time zone, scheduling will not work. Or it will work, but it will go out at the wrong time. So it's worth making sure that that matches up to your time zone, just to make sure your episodes are going to go out when you schedule them to go out. Also, author name here. If there's nothing in that field, the author of the podcast will be listed as whoever the account owner is. So if you need it to be something different, if you need it to be a company name, you need to pop that in there, and then that will override the account owner name in the author field instead for you. Author email is just if you want to pop an email in there that's different to the account owner's email. So if anyone needs to reach out to you about the podcast, they'll find that email in your RSS feed then, so they know who to contact. So if you need it to be different to your own email, stick something in there. And then just making sure these little content settings at the bottom match up with what you're putting out as well, because there's a couple of directories that do like to throw a hissy fit if these don't match up. So whether your content is episode by episode or in seasons, what language it's in, and whether the podcast is clean or explicit in nature. As I said before, only turn this to explicit if you're pretty sure almost every single episode is going to be explicit. If you're on the business plan, you do also have the option here to turn the Podcast.co logos and branding off on the provided web pages and embeddable players as well. And down the bottom here, this is a little bit complicated, but essentially, if you want to use third-party analytics platforms like Chartable or Podtrack, for example, they usually give you like a little link thing, so you can just paste that into there and click save, and that will apply it to your RSS feed, so they can start reading the data that they need to have to provide you with the third-party analytics. Now, that exciting new thing that we mentioned at the beginning of this stream is the advertising right here. So as you can see, this is currently still in beta. We're still getting feedback and making sure there's no issues with it. But so far, people have really been liking this feature. So essentially what this is let's say you got a sponsorship for your podcast and you needed to then apply the same sponsorship message to the beginning and the end of your podcast on every single episode for a month. So what you can do using this is you can record your sponsorship message and upload it into here. And then once you've uploaded the file in here, when you upload an episode, there will be an extra little button for you to turn pre-roll and post-roll on. And what that will do is anything that you've put in here into pre or post, pre will apply this recording to the beginning of your podcast episode automatically, and post will apply whatever you've popped in there to the end of your episode automatically. So it just saves you a lot of work of when you're editing, having to, edit the sponsorship messaging yourself. You can just upload it into here, and then when you upload an episode, turn it on, and it'll automatically apply those messages for you. So it just makes your life a little bit easier. This is available on the Pro plan and above. So as long as you're on one of the 2 network plans, you'll have access to this feature. As I said, it's currently in beta at the moment. So if you do encounter any issues or if you have any feedback on it, do send us a message and let us know. We'd love to hear about it and make it the best that it can be. Share and publish is the final bit in here, and this is usually where the most questions come up. So our distribution lives in here. Now, this is available on every single plan. No matter what plan you're on, you'll have our one-click distribution. So just to go over it, you do have the option to manage the whole process yourself. So if you click that button, that collapses away, and then you have access to your RSS feed URL here, so you can copy that real easy. And you have access to our help guides on this little link here to help you submit your podcast everywhere. And then when you start getting those links back of your podcast on different platforms, you can pop those links in here, and that will connect them up to things like your podcast page that I'll show you in a bit. If you have a takeover, you can click distribute my podcast here. And what that will do is it will send a submissions request to our submissions team. And you'll see that you've got this orange writing right here that says submissions pending. Once they pick that up, you'll get an email saying that they started working on it, and this orange text will change to we're working on it. That usually takes about 24 hours, unless it's a weekend, in which case it will be the next working day. So yeah, that will change to we're working on it, and all these icons you can see here, they all start grayed out like these ones. Once we have gone in and started getting your podcast approved on different platforms, these will light up in color. So you can come in here and copy the link or access your podcast on that platform to have a look and make sure it's all displaying okay. Once we've finished the whole process, you'll get another email saying we're all done with all the links on it, and they'll remain in here for you to be able to access them. At the moment, we submit to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Acast, TuneIn, Pocket Casts, Breaker, Stitcher. We also do Deezer, and we do iHeartRadio by request. The reason we do that one by request is just because they take quite a long time, and they don't guarantee that your podcast will get through onto the platform. So we just like to be able to keep a closer, more personal eye on that one. A few people have asked me about Amazon because they have recently opened up to adding podcasts onto the platform. We're currently in contact with them, and we're hoping to have a solution sorted really soon. So if you are interested in that, just fire us a message at the moment, and we will see what we can do for you. Also, that whole process, the initial process of submitting you everywhere, can take between 5 to 7 days. Main culprits being Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, they do take the longest. Once you are listed everywhere, you only have to do this process once. Every new episode you upload after being listed everywhere will only take up to 24 hours to be available on all platforms. so you don't have to wait 5 to 7 days for every single episode. Podcast player on the left here is the embeddable player we provide, but this time it's for the whole podcast in one player. So you've got the embed code up the top here with a handy little copy button right there. And this is what the players look like. So you have the customization options in here. Any customization you make to this player will also translate over to the individual episode players I showed you before, just for consistency's sake. So you can choose between a dark and a light theme for the player. You can change the color of the buttons on the player to whatever you'd like. So if you've got branded colors, you can type that in down there and it will all adjust for you. You can choose between squared off and rounded off buttons, and you can turn downloads, sharing, and subscriptions on or off depending on what you want people to be able to do using the player. Most people leave all three of those on. There's not too many reasons you'd want to switch those off. Podcast page. I'm going to briefly take you guys through this, but I am going to let you know that there is a massive update coming to podcast pages very soon. So they're going to look a whole lot different, a whole lot sleeker. The new designs are really impressive, so I really think you guys are going to like them. But as for basic functionality in here, you can upload a custom head image. That can be whatever you like. We've got size guidelines for that in our help center. You can change the podcast title. It's been a long day. You can change the page title to whatever you'd like, or you can turn it off completely if you've got the title of your podcast on the actual image itself and you don't want the text overlay on top. You can connect up some social media channels down here. So at the moment we do Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. You can choose between a dark and a light theme for the page, and you can change the color of the color scheme of the page, so like buttons and titles and things like that, using the hex here. Again, so if you've got branded colors, you can just type it in instead. Down here, you can turn downloads off if you need to, and show title is what I was talking about before with the text overlay of the title. If you need that turned off, you can turn it off right there. And if you want to connect up some donation links, you can do that too. So we offer Patreon and PayPal at the moment. With the new designs, I believe if, Daryl, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but you can add a bit about the host of the podcast. I believe that's on Pro Plan and above. I could be wrong.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so if you're on Pro Plan and above, you'll have an extra section in here where you can add a bit about the host of the podcast. And you'll also have the option to add images into the descriptions and things like that as well. So there's a few more customization options coming with the new designs, which is pretty cool. So definitely looking forward to those new designs. And then right here on the left, finally, we have the subscribe button. So I am just going to switch to a live podcast to show you guys this one, just because what I'm about to say is going to make absolutely zero sense otherwise. So essentially, it's this little tiny button here. Again, you've got the embed code at the top here, real easy. You can just click copy next to it and you've got it. You can choose between a dark and a light theme for the button and change the color of the word subscribe to whatever you'd like. And then you can select up to 5 directories that your podcast is live in, like that. And then when people go to your website and they want to subscribe, they'll come to this button, and on hover, it shows those 5 directories there. So you can click through and subscribe really easy to whichever one's the best option for you. Just to clarify the reason why that's 5, we did try it with a few more than that, and it either broke or it just looked weird. So we're sticking with 5 for now. And that's pretty much a decent rundown of a normal account and how it all works. So I think we'll flick back over now.
Cool. All right. So yeah, that is a brief overview of Podcast.co, including our new pre and post roll ad feature, which is quite exciting. So we'll go through all these questions in just a moment. Before we do, I just want to talk you through a new platform that we have as well called Matchmaker. So it's perfect for meeting new podcasters and other guests and stuff, just connecting your show to others. It's a great way to get more listeners. So Here we go. So this is the Matchmaker homepage. So it's completely free to join. Just create your account, and then you're just on. So what you can do is you can filter by shows and guests. So if you are a podcaster looking for a guest, you just click this Find a Guest button at the top here. And then you can narrow down by different categories. So depending on what your podcast is about, you narrow down. So let's find someone who's in marketing. Again, you can search by country to make things easier. So for me, it would be easier for me to interview someone based in the United Kingdom just for time zone reasons. And then we have the option to make your profile unavailable as well. So if you're not interested in being on shows at the moment, you become unavailable. I don't want to see people who are unavailable because I need someone on my podcast now. So I hide the unavailable profiles and apply filters. And then these are the marketing podcasters based in the United Kingdom. So let's just say I wanted to reach out to Alan here. So I can see his profile here. It's got all the information that you could probably want about him. So you can have a little read through, see if he's right for you. If his interests and what he's been on before is relevant to what your podcast is about. If so, click this little contact button. I don't have a podcast show set up at the moment, so it's not going to work properly. But what you would do here is you just select your show, and then that'll open the chat option for you. So you can just start sending messages, connecting to other podcasters, and finding people to be on your show. If you're a podcaster and you want to be on someone else's show, same process. So let's find some marketing podcasts in the United Kingdom. Let's just go for the Unified Brand podcast. So again, have a little look through the show, see if it's right for me. If so, click contact and then enter your message. Just start talking to them. Find a time that's good for both of you to do your little interview, and then you're done. It's that simple. If I'm trying to find people and I'm not interested in reaching out right now, just add them to favorites because you don't want to lose it. And then you've got the little favorites bar up here, so you can find all your favorite shows. You can also favorite guests as well. And then all your messages are just all in here in the little messages section. And that's it. It's just really that simple. You can edit your profile as well. So here we go. So you can now record a little 60-second pitch as well. So when people first click on your profile, they can watch a quick little video to see what you're going to be like talking on the podcast as well. So it's kind of like an elevator pitch. You just really want to sell yourself as much as you can in those first 60 seconds. People watching it are going to love it or hate it. And if they like you, then they're going to be messaging you. So it's that simple. It just records straight into browser as well. So if you just click the record video button, it'll turn your microphone on, just start recording. And it's easy as that. Or if you've already got one, you can just click the upload button. And then you just edit your stuff here. You can enter some links to your social media, your podcast, anything that you like in here as well. And then again, as I mentioned, if you're not interested in being on a podcast at the moment, just make yourself unavailable. And that's it really. So if I wanted to make a show, you just click add a new show, enter the title of your show here. Yeah, it's that simple. It's really easy to do. Doesn't take long. And then you will be finding guests and podcasts to be on in no time. And it's a great way just to showcase yourself more and just be on other podcasts. Cross promotion is a great way just to make yourself more known. But we'll get more into that in a little bit. So shall we start going through some of these questions?
The chat's been busy.
The
chat's been busy.
Okay. Right. So first question is, can you monetize your podcast?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, there are a few different ways that you can do that. So as Laura showed you before, you've got the Patreon or the PayPal links that you can add into your show.
Mm-hmm.
So that's available on all of our plans as a standard. People will go to your Pod.co page and just have the links there. You can put the links out on your social media as well, just to get people to support you where they can.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are on a pro or a business plan, then from now on, you can start adding your own adverts into your show, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So next question is, how can you get people to talk to you on your own podcast? So that's interviewing based. So a great way to get people on your podcast as guests, as I just showed you, is probably going to be Matchmaker. It's really simple. You just start connecting to people as soon as you can, start messaging them. Yeah, easy. And again, it's completely free to use. It's really, really easy.
Yeah, and we've had a lot of people message us as well that have said that they've had some decent success on there as well. So it does work.
Yeah, the amount of new people getting on there each day is a lot. So there are a lot of people on there as well. So you can really narrow down those search filters as well, just to find the right person for you. There's bound to be someone on there for everyone now. Cool. Is there a limit to the amount of podcasts you can schedule?
As far as I'm aware, no. You can, if you really wanted to, you could pre-record 100. I'm pretty sure. Just schedule them up. I don't think there's a top limit, but obviously, bear in mind you've got to make the time to record all of these.
Yeah.
So, so no, there isn't. Is the short answer.
And if you are doing like a time sensitive podcast, you don't want to be recording too far in advance. If you're talking about something that's like fairly new, you want to be getting out there as soon as you can, really. So it's probably best to go like maybe 1 or 2 weeks in advance, maybe. Cool. Next question is, can I bulk upload several hundreds of files at once?
No. So the reasoning for Podcast.co doing one episode at a time is literally, as you saw me showing earlier, when you upload an episode, you have to upload a title, description, etc. Along with that. So if you were to upload like 100 episodes at once, you would then be sat there for ages typing out each title and description and etc. So we do it one at a time, just for the pure reason of making it easier. If it's a case of you're trying to get a whole podcast across into podcast.co that has hundreds of episodes attached, it would be better to then use the import option when you sign up for an account or when you're adding a new podcast to your account. Click import podcast settings, put the existing RSS feed for your podcast into there, and it will pull all of those episodes across automatically, so you don't have to sit there and upload each one individually. That's probably an easier way of managing that.
And is there a time frame on how long that would take if I were to import a few hundred episodes in that way?
So our imports are pretty quick. So for a few hundred episodes, I would say probably 5 minutes absolute tops. So probably a lot shorter than that, to be honest, but 5 minutes absolute tops. It's a pretty quick process.
Cool. All right then. How do I get an audience? Well, that's a good question. So the best way to get an audience is just to market yourself as much as you can. Just promote your podcast anywhere that's possible. Set up social media pages for you. So Twitter, Instagram, Facebook page for your podcast. Join different groups as well. There's loads of different groups on Facebook that you can join that allow you to cross-promote your podcast. And there's hashtags on Twitter, so start hashtagging. Create a hashtag for your podcast as well. So then when people start getting used to it, they'll be sharing it as well using your hashtag, and then more people are going to be seeing it. Same on Instagram as well. I think there are a few pages on Instagram as well that are like cross-promotion groups. So what they'll do is they'll share your podcast on their Instagram stories, and then you share theirs and just promote each other that way. Just build an audience wherever you can. Appear on other podcasts, promote yourself there, get other people onto your podcast, as we mentioned before. There are just so many different ways that you can build your audience these days.
Yeah. And one thing I will mention that I mention quite a lot in individual chats I have with people, because it's a mistake I see quite often, particularly on Twitter, is if you're going to promote your podcast on Twitter, please do not be one of these people that posts each time there's a new episode and then never again, because it's the short answer is it's not going to work. You need to be creating a discussion with your audience and getting involved with your audience and making them feel like they're a part of something. Without doing that, there's no interaction, and it just feels a bit like, pay attention to me all the time instead of have a conversation with me, which is different. So yeah, get them involved, create a discussion, and it'll work out a lot better for you when promoting your podcast.
Yeah, and again on that, don't just talk on your own Twitter feed as well. Start interacting with other people. Just if there's an interest, if you're in a specific niche with your podcast, talk to people even though they're not your listeners. Don't necessarily just drop your podcast into them, because that could be a bit intrusive if they're in the middle of a conversation or something. Get your point across, build a bit of a rapport with them, and then once that's done, then drop in your podcast episode.
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so how long does it usually take for descriptions or titles to update if corrected?
So this depends. So if it's an episode title or an episode description, it's usually pretty fast. I'd probably say like 24 hours you're looking at for that. If it's the title of the podcast or anything to do with the main body of the podcast, it can take a little bit longer. Simple reason is just when directories are refreshing your RSS feed, most commonly they're just looking at the episodes bit to pull in new episodes. And then once in like every 48 hours, for example, they'll check the entire feed. So anything to do with like the main body of the podcast might take a little bit longer than the standard 24 hours. But it will update. And I should mention as well, if anything like that, if you do update it and it is taking longer than it probably should be, you can drop a message to support, which is myself, via the chat bubble in the bottom right of your dashboard, or by emailing help@podcast.co. That will get through to me as well, and then I'll be able to take a look at that.
Cool. Okay. What type of file does an ad recording need to be?
MP3. Everything needs to be an MP3. Plain answer is literally just some directories do not like any other file type apart from MP3, and they will break if they have anything else. So MP3 is your best shout, and that's the only thing that we accept. So please upload an MP3.
Cool. And it's up to 10 megabyte, was it, or gigabyte? I always get confused with bytes.
Yes, 10 megabytes in size.
I never know which one's the big one and which one's the small one. Which is big's the big one, isn't it? Yeah. That was a weird moment for me there. And again, with adverts as well. So what you can do is you can record your own, you can like broker negotiations with different companies. So if you are in a niche, if you're in a specific niche, then you can reach out to a company that is relevant to you and then ask if they're interested in sponsoring you. If so, then you just record your own pre and post roll ads there, and you'll insert them yourselves. If you're not at that stage yet, you're not quite sure what kind of sponsorships you want to work with, but you are getting good download numbers each month, then what you can do is you can just reach out to us, and then we can help you find someone to sponsor your podcast as well. Mm-hmm. So if you are in that situation, just drop us a message and we will do whatever we can to help you out. Okay, so we've got a question about podcast licensing as well. Do I need a license to play music on my podcast?
So this always comes up. The hard answer and the short answer is there is no licensing for podcasts that I am aware of. Obviously, if anyone wants to correct me on that, feel free. I would be very interested. But as far as I'm aware, there's no licensing that covers podcasts. Main reason being they're globally available and they're downloadable and on demand, and it's really hard to cover that type of content. I get a lot of people coming to me that have radio stations that want to have a podcast, and they tell me, they have a radio license, so they must be covered. If you look in the terms of your license, quite often that is not the case. And it does explicitly say in your license terms, it does not cover on-demand content. So the long and short of it is, please try and avoid playing copyrighted music or even clips of movies and stuff in your podcast if you can. because likelihood is it will eventually get taken down.
And Spotify these days are quite hot on taking down podcasts with unlicensed music. It just happens all the time now because it's just what they do.
Yeah.
Cool. So we've got another question here is what kind of third-party analytics tools? You mentioned those earlier.
Yeah. So the two most common ones would be Podtrack and Chartable. So those are the ones that I see the most. There's probably other ones out there. Those are the two main ones that most people come to me with. And so when you sign up for them, they'll provide you with a tiny little link. I think for Podcorn or whatever, it's like it's an abbreviated version of Podcorn/E. It's tiny. So you take that, you pop it in that media URL prefix box that I showed you before. That'll attach it to your RSS feed, and then they'll be able to pull in the data that they need to be able to show you their third-party analytics that they can provide. Chartable's quite a good one for if you want to try and work out where you are in the Apple charts. They do show you that information. So yeah, it's worth signing up for and worth having a play around with and a look at. I believe both are free. So check them out, have a go, see what you think, basically.
Yeah. All right, so we've got another one here is how long should a podcast be?
That's a bit like how long is a piece of string? So
how long does it need to be?
So we usually say look at sort of 30-40 minutes max. 20 to 30 minutes is where we recommend, and then 30 to 40 minutes max. Anything after that, really, your audience is going to start dropping, unless it's like a super intense topic that needs to be covered at great length. Your audience's attention probably will start dropping after that, just because that's how human attention works. And also, a lot of these people are probably listening to your podcast on a lunch break, for example, or on a commute. And the average commute, particularly in city centres, is usually around 30 to 40 minutes max.
Well, that's a lot less than that these days.
Well, yeah, that's true. So we sort of recommend around about that sort of time. Like I said, unless it's a really intense topic that needs to be covered at length.
Yeah. And then what you'll find is as well, once you've got that audience built up, you might find that they are quite interested in longer content. So you can it's a question you can ask across your social media is, do you want longer episodes? Find out what the people who are listening to you want, and then do it that way instead of what you feel might be right. But again, it's just all going to be based on your time as well. Have you got time to create a long podcast every week or so? If not, just stick to shorter content. Yeah. Cool. Have you got any advice for creating artwork?
Couple of bits. The absolute worst cases I see are the ones that completely overload their logo with so much text it is unreadable. You have to remember when designing a logo that for most people, because podcasts are most commonly accessed on mobile phones, so for most people your logo is going to be about this big. So if there's any text on it, it's probably not going to be read. So if you're going to put text on it, literally just stick to the title of the podcast and maybe like your name. I wouldn't really put anything other than that. Also with like colors and stuff, don't try and put like every color in the rainbow on there. Just pick like a certain color scheme and stick with that. And it'll look a whole lot sleeker and a lot nicer when people are scrolling through. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Daryl.
Just try and find stuff that's relevant to what your podcast is about. So any images that you're going to be using on there, make sure they are relevant, not too busy. Try and censor them as well, I think.
Yes.
Like you don't want stuff that's spilling off the edges because it's not going to be seen. Just don't make it too busy.
Yeah.
Nice and tidy. And again, just look at podcast artwork that's like relevant to what you're doing as well. If there's a podcast out there that's similar to what you're doing, look at their podcast, get some inspiration. I'm not saying copy it, but you can be inspired by it. Okay. Should I upload a trailer?
Yes. So uploading a trailer actually is beneficial in a couple of different ways. So if you upload a trailer for your podcast, one good thing about that is you then have that to promote your podcast on different social media before it's even out. So you can use that to get a bit of attention directed at your podcast, get some hype, show people what it's going to be all about, and really build up some excitement about it coming out. And also, on the other side of things, it helps us with distribution because, like I said, the initial distribution process can take between 5 to 7 days. Most directories, when we go and like put your podcast forward onto those directories, will take 24 hours and then it'll be live. Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts can take a little bit longer than that. So initially your podcast will be going live on these platforms at different times. So it is actually better to go live with a trailer because then it's not too bad if, you know, your podcast gets approved on Spotify within 24 hours and then Apple 5 days later. It's not going to look as bad. And then once you're everywhere, you can start with episode 1 and it'll be everywhere within 24 hours and nice and neat and contained within the 24-hour period. So it just looks a lot nicer and a lot neater in that respect. So definitely recommend putting a trailer out first.
Yeah. I think that covered all the trailer question there.
I'm passionate about
podcast trailer. We've got a video on our YouTube as well. Graham can put a link to it in the chat for you if you want. Just give him something to do there. How do I make a great podcast intro?
Good question. I think we have an article on this actually somewhere. But
we absolutely do.
Yeah. So basically, keep it short, keep it sweet. Don't try and overload it with a lot of information. You literally just need to say, welcome, here's what we're going to be talking about today in 2 to 3 sentences. And maybe if it's like a guest, maybe do like a couple of sentences about who they are and why you're talking to them. But don't go on for like loads of pages of script. Just keep it short and then go into the main body.
Just a brief overview of what the podcast episode is going to be about. Get people interested. Tell them why they need to listen to the whole episode, basically. Yeah.
Basically.
Cool. And I think this might be our last question, actually. It is, where can I get good copyright-free music?
Podcast.co/music, and Graham will link that in the chat, I'm sure. I know, it's been a long day, like I said. So yeah, we have one of our in-house editors is actually absolutely boss at this. So he's made an entire album of pod-safe music for you guys to download and use wherever you would like. So there's some pretty good tracks on there, especially for like if you want something to go like nicely behind an episode or behind an intro. Perfect for using that type of way. So podcast.co/music, got it right that time. And you can download that completely free and use as many as you want out of that.
Yeah. There are other places you can go as well. You can just find copyright-free music. There's a few different websites as well. But yeah, just use ours if you want. We don't mind.
Free Music Archive is another one, but you've got to be careful with Creative Commons licenses on there.
Again, you want to use something that is associated with other podcasters as well. A lot of podcasts will be using these free archive stuff. So when people listen to it, they might not link it to your podcast straight away. So try and find something that's a bit obscure if you can, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Also, another solution for that would be to go to something like Fiverr and actually commission someone to make you something that's completely unique to your podcast. And if you really wanted to knuckle down on branding and make sure you've got something nobody else has, do it that way instead and get someone to commission someone to make you a unique intro, an outro.
Yeah, and you can do artwork that way as well if you're not as artistic. Okay, I think that is about all the time we have this month. So thanks for joining us. Again, if you have any follow-up questions or anything else you want to ask us, drop us a message. We'll get back to you the next working day or same day, depending on what time you message us. Thanks again for joining us. Our next AMA will be on the 29th of October, right before Halloween. Should we dress up for it?
Maybe.
Join us to find out what we're dressing up as.
If you want to find out what we're dressing up as for Halloween, you'll have to come back next month.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us then. Hopefully you found it useful. Hopefully we answered all your questions anyway. Yeah, thanks.
Hey, before you go anywhere, I have a quick question for you. Do you have a podcast? And if you do you want to book more interesting, high-profile guests on your show? Well, if you answered yes to either of these questions, I'd love to invite you to come and join our community over at Matchmaker.fm. Matchmaker is a service that connects awesome podcasts just like yours with incredible and high-profile guests that make for really interesting conversations. It's really straightforward to get started and completely free to sign up. Just connect using your LinkedIn, Facebook or Google account, and then you can begin connecting with guests based on their area of expertise, location, and much more. If you haven't checked it out already, go to matchmaker.fm, get started. It's just like Tinder, but for podcasters.